to my photography journey. I'm Steve and I'll be taking you along on this journey with me. So today we're talking about cameras, and my first proper camera purchase was the Nikon Z5. I'm currently recording on that right now with a 35mm f1.8 lens, but what I actually got with the camera was this 24 to 50mm f4 to 6.3 kit lens, and I'll tell you a bit more about that in a moment as well. And prior to that, I had this camera. This is a Fujifilm Finepix HS30 EXR, and this was actually my wife's, and it worked brilliantly. It did everything that I needed it to do up to a point, and that's when I was looking to upgrade. And to do that, I did a lot of research. Basically, I looked on YouTube, I read reviews, lots and lots of websites and magazines and everything like that to try and find out what was the best camera for me and for what I wanted to do with it. So I actually bought this in September 2021, and it was on sale with Nikon, so for the same cost as the body normally would be, I got the kit lens into the deal as well, so I figure that's a win. So the Z5 was released in 2020, is a 24 megapixel full frame camera, and according to the reviews that I read, it's excellent for photos, but is let down a bit by the video side of things. Now, photos are what I am interested in taking primarily, and that seemed to suit me absolutely fine. I have started to use it a bit more for some video these days, and I've not had any problems with it at all. It does what I need it to do for this kind of thing. The Fujifilm. So this is what I had beforehand. This is 16 megapixels. It's got a fixed lens, which is a 24 to 720mm zoom, and this is a cropped sensor, and it's nice. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It did everything that I wanted it to do up to a point. It's got an SD card slot, just the one. It does have headphone out, USB and HDMI, and it kind of has all the right settings and everything that you would find in a mirrorless camera. It just, things aren't quite as good. So the maximum shutter speed is 1/4000th of a second compared to the 1/8000th on the Nikon. It's a cropped sensor. The lens is fixed. There's no image stabilization. The burst rate, while it is actually quite good, the speed of writing to the SD card in RAW really lets it down, so it could only really take 2 or 3 pictures before that ran out. And then upgrading that to the Z5 made a big difference. And with the lens, there have been some bad reviews about this. People have said that it's actually not very good, but to be honest, it does everything that I want it to do. It's kind of completely different to the Finepix lens, and the range of 24 to 50 is perfect for what I need it for. The lens itself is small and light and easily pop in a bag, pop it on the camera, and it's easy to carry around. It's easy to use kind of day to day. So with my research prior to getting the Nikon, I looked at Sony and Canon as well. So it was the Sony A7 II, which came out in 2014, so it was about 6 years old, 7 years old by the time I was looking at it. So that definitely put me off a bit. These were all kind of around the same price for a full frame mirrorless camera back when I got the Nikon, and this was kind of my price range. I didn't want to spend a huge amount of money on this because it was new to me really, and I wanted something that could get me out there taking more pictures and to be able to have the use of the camera and the functions that I wanted, but without spending an absolute fortune on it at the time. The Canon EOS RP it just didn't seem to have the functions that I wanted, so it was the Nikon that I saw and liked and haven't regretted at all since. I'm definitely still getting to know this camera. It's something that I'm learning every single day, and as I use it more often, my fingers kind of feel where they should be, working out what buttons are under which finger, which direction to twist the dial in to get the outcome that I want. And sometimes I get this right, sometimes I get it wrong. For example, I was out with Ruby, Black Spaniel, on Sunday last week, and she was enjoying jumping into a lake. So parts of the lake were in full sunshine, Ruby was in the shadows under the trees. She was moving quickly, and trying to get all of those things balanced so that I could get a good picture of it was definitely quite difficult. I tend to shoot in manual. I've only ever really done that. I've not really used the auto on there at all. But when I was on a course with someone that specialises in wedding photography, they use aperture priority a lot because they want to be able to set their aperture and not have to worry about any of the other bits adapting to different conditions, moving people and things like that. So it's everyone has their own use. It doesn't matter as long as you're using your camera and enjoying doing it. That's kind of the main thing. Using manual, definitely more to learn that way, but I like having that control of being able to show exactly what I want in that picture, even though sometimes they don't come out as I would want. And to be honest, aperture priority would probably have worked a lot better for Ruby jumping into the lake than my manual mode did, but I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed taking the pictures and editing them afterwards, even though some of them were a little bit out of focus. Because I take quite a few different types of pictures, one thing that I find really useful is the user modes that you can select on top of the camera. You've got 3 different options. So number 1, I set for landscape photos, so the ISO is set to 100, as low as it will go. Aperture is set to around about f8 so that I can get most things in focus, and then the shutter speed is about 1/100th of a second, so that is a good starting point for going up or down as needed depending on the conditions. And with the autofocus, it's a single mode rather than tracking or anything like that, so that I can just focus on a tree or a rock or something like that, because it's not going to move anywhere, hopefully. You've also got a kind of shortcut I menu on the back of the camera. I'll do a full walkthrough of my settings and the different menu functions at some point, but for now, this quick access menu you can customize with each of the user settings as well. So I've got it set up so that things like silent photography, bursts, multiple exposures are all for the user too. I've got that set up for more action type shots. These are things like dogs jumping into lakes, a small child running across a field. So with these, it's faster shutter speed. The ISO is up a bit so that it kind of compensates a little bit for the for that faster shutter speed. We'll go into a bit more detail with those kind of settings starting next week. So next week we're going to start looking at exposure, and we'll start by talking about ISO. But for this week, I've set these up in the camera and they're easy to use for when I need to. And then user 3 I've set up for use in manual mode, so it's manual focus. So on the screen through the viewfinder, I can see essentially red lines that tell me what is in focus. So I use that to make sure that I'm focusing on what I want to with that lens. That's hard work. The lens that I tend to use most often is this 24-50. As I said, it's not the greatest by the sounds of the reviews, but it is also much better than I've had before, so I really enjoy that, and the fact that it's small and light makes a big difference. And then I've also got a 35mm f1.8, which is slightly bigger, slightly heavier, slightly longer, so it's actually a lot more difficult to use because it's not so easy just to sling in a bag and pop out into town, to the park with it and that kind of thing. It's more of a I'm going to take photos lens. I bought this on mpb.com, so I got it second hand, which meant that I saved a couple of £100 off of its new value. There's a couple of scratches on the barrel of it, but certainly nothing that will affect image quality, and it doesn't even look particularly used. Looks the same kind of condition as this one, to be honest. And so I would definitely recommend buying second-hand lenses if you're after one. As much as I say how good this lens is, changing from an f4 to an f1.8, so much more light comes into the camera. That ISO can go right down, the shutter speed can increase, and you still get a good exposure at the end of it. And what that means is that things like autofocus do work a bit quicker. So it's easier for the camera to see what's going on and choose what it should be focusing on, and I found that's better. So taking a picture of the child running around is definitely easier with this lens than with this 24-50. So we're now recording on the 24-50mm at about f5, I think, mainly so that I could show you this. This is the 35mm 1.8s. As you can see, it's quite a bit bigger, particularly when you actually add in the hood as well. So quite a chunky lens, not the easiest one to carry around, but it's an f1.8, so it is very good for capturing lower light, and you can probably see a bit of a difference in the depth of field and how it looks with this lens at the moment. So they're both set, well, this is 35mm and this one is currently set to 35mm, thereabouts. So you'll be able to see if there is a difference between the two, but I just wanted to take some time to show you this one. So having this camera has made me want to take more pictures. So I started doing a 365 challenge in January this year, and what that is taking one picture every single day, editing it and posting it. So I post it mainly to Instagram, now to Vero, and sometimes on Twitter as well. Links to all of those are down below, so come and follow along. And what that has done is allowed me to practice and practice and practice, repeating the same movements over and over again, whether it's selecting the right ISO, the right shutter speed, composing the pictures, and then once I've done all that, the transferring them into Lightroom, the editing them, the processing of them to get the image to look how I want it to look, and then the posting it to social media so that I've got that kind of accountability. And it's this repetitive nature of doing all of these things over and over again that has led to my photography improving over that year. And I can see, looking back on my pictures on Instagram over that year, that there's a big difference between January to now. Where are we? End of August. And that is purely down to having practiced. So that's my biggest tip, is that if you want to improve your photography, take pictures, lots and lots of pictures, edit them, post them, get people to look at them, and that will definitely help improve everything. So follow me on Instagram and everything like that, and then come back here next week for the next video in my photography journey, which will be starting to talk about more of the details in photography. So this will be things like exposure and the actual settings on the camera. So next week we'll talk about ISO, what it is, why it's called that, what it does, and from there we'll start to learn a bit more about exposure, what you can control, how you can control it, and why that will make your photos look even better. So I'll see you next week then. Bye.